have to do
Okay.
that.
Hello, welcome everyone to Co-Creation Station. This is the podcast where we talk about law of attraction, art of allowing, mind, body, spirit connection, and how to best enjoy this miraculous, sometimes confounding, but always interesting journey we call life. My name is Collin. I'm a teacher, tarot, oracle card reader, and musician.
My name is Stephanie, and I am a transformational life coach. I help people shift away from negative thinking, and it transforms their lives. And I'm in San Diego, California.
And I'm in beautiful North Hollywood, California. Thanks so much for listening, watching, and for liking, subscribing, reviewing us, and all that. We really appreciate it. What I was talking about, this is a follow-up to the previous episode, where a continuation of that discussion, really, where we were talking about, where what I was about to say to Stephanie before we hit record was one of the things I loved about watching people react to crazy sports victories on YouTube. Is that I feel like people celebrate physically the way our bodies really are built to, like if we were really open to how amazing life is, like we would be doing jumping jacks more often, just spontaneously. Like we'd be dancing spontaneously more often. Like I get, like in certain situations, like the grocery store, like it would be inconvenient if every time somebody found their favorite food, they had to dance in front of everybody, but also
what
it
would
might make
life
the grocery
be
store
like? Like,
That's
what
what
would
I
life
mean.
be
Yeah.
like if we weren't so like
Yeah.
proper and contained and just kind of like pull rein in our emotions? But in those moments, we're like, oh my god, I did like the
Yeah.
time I was sitting in Baskin Robbins enjoying a cup of ice cream, reading an Abraham book, and Baskin Robbins in my neighborhood is playing music. And the DJ comes on and says a band that I had looked at the beginning of the year, Zach Brown band that I love and wanted to see. I had looked at their calendar; they weren't coming in that year, and I was really disappointed.
Mm.
And the DJ's like, "Oh yeah, in the next hour we're going to give away Zach Brown tickets." And I went, if I would have been, because inside I was like, "What?" If I would have just been, I
Yeah.
just got chills at my legs. Oh my god, they're coming to town! Like, really, like expressed my emotions. Because
Yeah.
I know, like, some people would be like, oh my God, what's wrong with her? But other people would, like, because when I see someone laughing, I like start to smile and I laugh, or I just
Yeah.
appreciate someone's joy, right? It just depends
Yeah.
on where I'm at on the spectrum of happiness or sadness. But yeah, what would that be like?
No, I think that's why, have you watched like flash mob videos on YouTube where like a bunch of
Oh,
dancers
yes,
blend into,
yes. I
yeah.
love those. Those are great.
I mean, they get millions of views, and I think that's one of the reasons. It's because all of a sudden, because if you watch the observers, the people who aren't expecting dancers to just suddenly materialize,
Yeah.
they just get so jazzed. And
Yeah.
like when the
It's
dancers are finished,
invigorating.
there's this like spontaneous, like
Hmm.
overwhelming applause from everybody that was, and
Yeah.
everybody feels like super lucky, like, oh, I'm so glad I was here.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I think that's because like those flash mob things, what they kind of are doing are showing you that we walk around as if ordinary moments aren't that big of a deal, you
Or
know?
that we're not
And
connected either.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
so disassociated from everyone. Like,
yeah,
I'll be walking by someone and I'll see, like, they'll just, we both look at each other and then we look away, or
yeah,
someone's coming down the street and they'll like pick up their phone because they're really uncomfortable that we're gonna like come into proximity of like a foot of each other or 2 feet or whatever. And
yeah,
but what if we played with that this week? Like, or just in the next month had this intention of like, okay, when I feel some type of joy or excitement or whatever it may be,
yeah,
awe, that I just kind of allowed myself, and we could just play with it because maybe the first time it wouldn't come off natural, but just kind of like be open. I'm game to do that, like, and
I'm
just
too. I'm gonna one up you.
ooh,
Um, because but you tell me if you're willing to do this, because this is like
okay,
a show decision.
okay,
Um, is to, if people want, they can comment on the YouTube video or send us an email at
okay, okay.
co-creationstation1111 at gmail.com and tell us something that they want to celebrate with us. Something that happened in their life, or something
Oh,
can be
yeah,
a big deal, or it can be just something they're really grateful for.
yeah,
And we can, it'll depend on how many we get. Like if we
yeah,
just get one or two, we can just
yeah,
read them at the beginning of an episode and
yeah,
celebrate with that person.
yeah,
If we
yeah.
get like a whole bunch, we could do a whole episode around it.
Absolutely,
I think that'd be
absolutely.
really cool.
Yeah, that would. Absolutely, let's do that. And I
Yeah.
mean, are you game to like in our personal lives in
Yes.
the next month, just kind of have
Yes,
that
Coach
intent?
Stephanie. Yes, life
No,
coach
no,
Stephanie.
I just wanted some clarity. That's all. I'm not being a coach. I'm just, I'm just wanting some clarity. I'm like, are we
Yeah.
going to do that? Okay, okay,
Yeah.
sweet, sweet
So
beans.
can you be a little more specific about what we're actually going to do? So when we're going to be mindful of noticing awesome things more often, just to be a
Well,
little more
just
observant.
so I think I'm gonna have to write myself a note and just have it out and
Me too.
about, and just be like, kind of that thing where, for instance, that experience that I had at Baskin Robbins, just be like, okay, or I just wonder if it could be any emotion, like if someone texts me and they like can't make a date that we set up, like a girlfriend's like, and I'm just like, "Aw, what? Aw, that," you know what I mean? Just be more expressive in my emotions
Oh, okay.
outwardly, as opposed to like holding it in and being in my head, but
Okay.
connecting my emotions with my body and my voice, and just, in a, it can be subtle or it can be expressive. I mean, if it's joyful, like someone just, got whatever, I can be like,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, that's so great,"
Yeah.
if I'm standing in a grocery store or wherever.
Yeah.
That kind
So
of a
we're
thing.
gonna. So like, here's what I'm thinking. Like,
Okay.
so when I catch a moment of emotion
Okay.
in the course of my day this week,
Yeah.
I'm going to express it physically, allow my body to express it physically,
Yeah.
and then I'm
Yeah.
going to text you
Okay.
and I'm going to say,
Sweet.
"Hey, Steph, I'm letting you know, I just felt some joy around whatever, and
Okay.
I just, jumped up and down for a couple seconds."
Oh, freak yes. I love that. I love that. Okay.
Because that, okay, so I'm good with that. I'm good with
Okay.
that, and then we'll
Yeah.
we'll
Sweet.
talk about how it goes on future episodes here.
Yeah.
Um, you know what that reminds me of too? I'm not sure. This might have been you as when I was your coaching client. I don't remember, but somewhere I came across the idea that because when a lot of times when people say, "Oh, you got to celebrate things," like we have this idea of like it's almost like this specifically commercialized thing. Like you have to go buy yourself something, or you have to go on a
Yeah.
trip, or you have to like
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
party with friends and
Yeah.
go to a bar and spend money or whatever. And the thing is like can become like a point of resistance to celebrating, because it's like if you have to plan, like it becomes work, and that
That's what
defeats
I
the
was thinking.
purpose.
That it's work. I think when I
Yeah,
mention it, people are like, and I'm like, no, it can be something as simple as, I
yeah,
have a friend slash client who has a hammock, and so I'll be like,
yeah,
and she loves tea, so I'll be like, make yourself your favorite cup of tea and go sit out in your patio, or go sit in your hammock and swing for like a minute, whatever.
yeah,
But that the intention is, oh, I am going to do X, Y, and Z to sell. And I always say like, and be in the moment and say like, when you're there, going, acknowledge yourself. Like I'll be like, okay, now I'm doing this because of dot dot dot.
yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing I was taught is, for the audio people who can't see us, I'm making a fist with my right hand, and I have my right arm up in the screen so you can see it here, like I'm gonna pull something, and then you just do like a pumping motion, like yeah, like this, like you just pull your arm back really fast, like yeah, like that.
Yeah.
And that's a physical, and especially if I say that word with that emotion, like yeah, you can hear like I'm doing it for demonstration purposes, but I feel better. Like I just
Yeah.
made myself feel
Yeah.
happier.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like, and that can be a celebration. And that's when we were watching the reaction videos to the whole
Oh
Alabama
my
Georgia thing.
gosh.
Like so many
Yeah.
people were expressing their emotion by
Yeah.
pumping their fists,
Yeah.
or I just noticed so many people, because there was that 30 seconds between the interception and the touchdown, and people were like pogo jumping. They're like, yes, 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 go, 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 go.
Yeah.
And that can be another way, just like pogo jumping for a few minutes. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's also another, I just saw this morning. Have you seen there's a line of TV commercials for Dr. Pepper with this character called Lil Sweet. Have you seen these?
No.
Okay, so they're pretty funny. They're pretty well done. So there's this little character called Lil Sweet, and he's a man. He's obviously played by an actor, and he's a normal size actor. But what they do is they shrink him down
Uh-huh.
with some sort of special effect. So he's
Yeah.
actually like 6 inches tall.
Yeah.
But what he does is he goes around. His whole thing is about people deserve a reward.
Mm.
And of course, he's repping Dr. Pepper. So Dr. Pepper is always the reward, but he goes around like rewarding people, and they had a new one on that I hadn't seen before this morning, and he's basically like lowered the bar for rewards. Like he's going out and giving more rewards for smaller things.
Uh-huh.
And one of them is like he's like in the back seat of a lady's car, and he's like, and he has this really high voice. He says everything like this.
I think
And
I may have seen it now.
yeah, so he says
this.
this lady, he's like, "Great job getting your daughter to school." And
Yeah,
she goes,
I've seen it.
she goes, "But I was 20 minutes late." And he's like, "But parenting is really hard. You deserve it anyway."
God.
And I feel like when I saw that, I was
That's
like,
great self-talk. Can you imagine?
I mean, it's funny,
Yeah,
but it's also like what we were talking about before. Like we are so hard on ourselves in this culture.
Really
So many of us have self-critical self-talk going so often that it's like, I mean, we barely celebrate the big achievements, but we don't really, accept this. We don't celebrate the small achievements either. And
or just being kinder and gentler to ourselves, like we would like I was talking to a client the other day, and we were getting into some inner child work, and I was like, yeah, like, because she was saying I wouldn't say that to my friends. I would be really gentle and loving, and
yeah,
and I'm like, yeah, that's what, that we need to do that to ourselves, and
yeah.
we do the opposite, and it's like, how's that working
Yeah.
for us? It's not. It
Yeah.
hurts, and we do that over and over, and so it's just like a muscle, practicing.
Yeah.
Just being. But that's so great. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not, I understand anything in the world can be taken to an extreme. Like, I'm not encouraging somebody to become a narcissist and just like, think that they're better than somebody else because they did their dishes this morning or something like that. But like,
it's not even about that, right? It's like not even taking it to that, but just be kinder and
yeah, it's just being kind to yourself and just acknowledging that life is challenging. And, when you do things like, I think that's the thing, like, as a musician, I've had this experience many times. Like when we do a show and, we promote it as well as we can, and we don't get the number of people we were hoping for to show up to the show.
Yeah.
But we still have, whatever, 12 people, something like that. Like, I'm just really grateful I know this work. I don't always do this perfectly, but what I try to do is to be like, really put in perspective. It's like, I'm alive on this planet. I get to play music. That's super fun. And then I get to write my own songs. That's super fun and super rewarding.
God, it's amazing.
And then 12 people, 12 other human beings who could do anything in this 45-minute period. They could be home watching TV. They could be home with their kids. They could be doing whatever. They chose to come and to spend their time listening to things that I created and to support me and to cheer me on and to have fun with me. Yeah. And like, when I really look at it like that, it's like, that's just gold. Like, how could you not celebrate that? How could you not celebrate that I was a part of co-creating something that awesome? But what we tend to do in our culture is be like, oh, there's only 12 people there. Well,
I know, right? Oh gosh.
You guys got to do more to get more people there to show us or something.
Blah,
like,
blah.
Yeah.
Well, and I love, and too, is like, oh my God, I got to make, if they had a good time or whatever, like I got to like show up for these, they showed up for me, and like, wow, they had fun. Like we all had fun, or, and I think it comes back to what we talked about before on here, is how we have a choice on how we look at things.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can focus on the things that don't feel good, and I can feel worse, or I can focus on the things that I do like about it, and celebrate those and feel good about them. And and like you were saying, like I get to write music and then perform it in front of these people, and I always love, like, it was the band Perry, their country artists and their siblings, and I remember an interview, and you've been successful for quite some time now, but I remember the sister saying, yeah, she goes, we would, even if we were just playing for one person, we'd pretend like we were playing for thousands.
Yeah.
And she goes, we were just getting to do what we love, and it didn't matter if there were 1, 10, or 100. We just performed like we were thankful, and just performed as if we were playing for 100,000. And like, perspective, wow, that's a pretty awesome attitude.
I would, and it goes, I have to be honest and say, I would love to say I'm in that place, and I'm not. 24/7. Like I definitely struggle with,
Yeah, but you have been, right?
but I have, yeah. And
Yeah.
I would say more often than not, that's where I end up,
And this
I
isn't
think,
about 24/7, right? I mean,
yeah,
we don't do that. Yeah.
yeah.
That whole word perfection, I heard it on something. I was listening to a Abraham video before we got onto friend time, and they're like, perfect. You guys, y'all, these are my words, but basically the
Mm,
intention was, you all think about being perfect. That doesn't exist. Like your
yeah.
perfect is done and you'll never be done. And I often, like I had a mentor say to me years ago, she's like, well, tell me what perfect, because I go, I'm not perfect, or I can't do it perfectly. And she goes, well, what is perfect to you? And I described it to her and she goes, I just want you to know that's not what perfect means to me. And she goes, perfect doesn't exist, because
Mm,
everybody's definition is different. So is that,
yeah.
so it's really interesting that we do that to ourselves.
No, I've told this story before, but I think it bears repeating for me, if for no one else. One thing that my former bandmate Dan and I did in my original band, Victor Bravo in New York City, we had this weird period where we knew we were going to start the band. Dan had actually moved down. We'd sort of started it in Boston and then realized that if it was going to really be a thing, it had to be in New York. So Dan had moved down to New York and we were starting to get ready, but we didn't know who the singer was going to be yet. We thought we still wanted to find a bass player. So we were just like rehearsing, working on songs. But during that period, we were going to see shows of bands like our music a lot because we wanted to sort of get familiar with the venues and the bar scene and all that, so we could maybe have just be more comfortable once we were starting to do shows and stuff like that, and meet people, meet other bands and stuff like that. And so we did. We ended up meeting a lot of other bands that we just became friends with, but were also super talented. But he and I both noticed this one thing really clearly and really early on, which was we would go to a show and like quite often it would be like we'd be seeing a band for the first time and we were both blown away. Like they were so talented, their songs were so good, like the whole show was so amazing. And we're both like kind of introverted folks. We're not like run up to a random stranger and say something, but like we would both feel compelled, at least the first few times, to go up to them and say, hi, I'm Dan, I'm Collin. I just want to tell you, I'm so glad we were here. That was an incredible show. And we would do that. And every single time, I mean, there was no exception. Every single time,
Oh, wow.
whatever musician we talked to, it's like they had recorded like a tape or a file of every single technical mistake they had made according to their own criteria during the set, meaning, and these are all original bands, so they wrote all the songs, so it's not like anybody in the audience could possibly know that they made a mistake, because like we've never heard these songs ever. But they but you write a song and you know how you want it to go, and like they played the wrong chord at the wrong time, or they sang the lyric wrong or something like that, and they literally would just like spew that verbally to us and then say, we're so sorry, this was a terrible show, please come back again, we'll be better next time.
Oh goodness.
And yeah, it was I'm glad you had that reaction, because it was really like, it was painful, and it really shows how much damage we can do to ourselves without even knowing. Like I think every one of those musicians thought they were doing something like responsible and noble by listing all the flaws and telling us, apologizing and telling us to come back.
They're having that self-talk, because we were talking earlier about the self-talk, so they're having that self-talk, so they're just sharing that with you.
It's like, here's my inner critic voice, and I'm just going to talk. I'm just going to let my inner critic talk to you for a while. But Dan and I got very real about that, talking in our own rehearsals, and we said, look, because what we both wanted to do was fix all our musician friends, like tell them not to do that. And we knew it was too deeply ingrained. Like it had happened too many times in exactly the same way. Like it's like, obviously this is something like most musicians just do. And, we told each other, like, we're not immune from this. Like we have inner critics, we have negative self-talk in our head. So this is what happened before the conversation is probably going to happen to us. Like we're going to somehow, once we start performing, we're going to be hyper aware of like all the technical mistakes we made. and we're going to feel some sort of weird compulsion to tell somebody right after the show. But what we had experienced every single time that happened is our high vibration as the audience, when we had that conversation, we couldn't keep it up. Like we couldn't keep having a good time. Like it was too hard. Like they talked us out of feeling good, you know? And so what we committed to ourselves is like, we're never going to do that. Like we are never going to talk about our opinion of the show until way after we've left the venue. We're alone in the cab on the way back to the rehearsal space and no one is listening. And we made a commitment to ourselves we would do that. And we stuck to that for 6 years. And it made, I mean, our whole journey as a band, I think, was completely different because of it. Because we allowed the positive energy that we created with the fans, with the audience people, we allowed that to not only stay, but we didn't quash it with our negative talk, but we also, when we allowed it, it got even bigger. It grew, Like when people got to celebrate with us and we were like, thank you. It was a really fun show. We're so glad you're here. They got more excited. And they would talk to, like, wasn't that a great show? And they'd be like, yeah, it was a great show. I'm so glad I was here. Like, we're glad you were here. And it was this, like, you could just feel the energy, like, go up, 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 up. And we would all leave feeling amazing. And then we would get in the cab and we did have that compulsion. And I was like, all right, tell me all your drumming mistakes. I'll tell you all my guitar and vocal mistakes. But by doing it that many times that way, we just realized after a while, it's like, oh, that whole tape that we keep is just irrelevant. Like it's just, we're going to go to rehearsal and try to be the best musicians we can be anyway. Like we don't need some sort of list of whatever, but that really is an attempt by our inner critics to just like completely sabotage the situation, only because the emotion is uncomfortable. Like being happy with other people who are happy for you is uncomfortable. It can be very uncomfortable. And if you tamp down the energy, then it gets
especially
easier
if we're
to deal
not
with.
used to it, right? Like
And we're not. Yeah,
that's not used to being in, just feeling better, feeling good most of the time, content, joyful, whatever, any spectrum of positive emotion, and then they're with someone who is showing positive emotion. It can be a really uncomfortable. It's a different feeling.
Yep. So cool. Well, thank you for telling me to hit record. I think this was a good, and this is a good bonus discussion for the follow up there. I think this is something that it's almost like we could talk about celebrating on every episode. Like it's just, it's because people who are struggling with the law of, how to work with the law of attraction, how to do the art of allowing, how to welcome in more stuff, how to feel better about their lives. It's like, it's not about like going out and getting a bunch of external things, somehow wrestling a bunch of external results into your life. It's more about just like being happy with who you are. But, I think it's a very natural question of like, well, how do I do that? And celebrating is just such an easy start,
It's an inside job for sure.
Yeah,
it comes from
because everybody, I think that's what I love about the Dr. Pepper commercial is what the truth that it illuminates is that everybody listening to this or watching this has done some incredible stuff in their life. And more than likely, they've done some really incredible stuff in the last 24 hours. So everybody listening and watching has something to celebrate, and so it's like, it's right there for you. You can start today. And
even like it doesn't even have to be big. It can just be like,
it can be
smaller. Or just like, I don't have to accomplish something wonderful, but I can acknowledge like those things that I have done and be kind and loving and gentle with myself and just be like, hey, I showed
up. If you need a video to show you how to celebrate, you can go to YouTube and search Georgia defeats Alabama fan celebration and watch all sorts of Georgia fans in the living rooms celebrating life. They're very nervous at first, and then they celebrate life. All right. Well, thanks so much for watching and listening. We really appreciate your support here. We wish you a happy and abundant week. If people want to get in touch with you, Stephanie, how can they do it?
www.powerinjoy, powerinjoy.com. I have a free 30-minute discovery session for you. And at Instagram, same name, @powerinjoy.
And you can always follow me or send me a direct message on Instagram. I'm at Collin with 2 L's _ Daniels, plural, _ Worster, Worster. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.